Good evening, everyone. This is Kelly coming to you from Northern Saskatchewan, Canada on August 8th, 2018. Today is my big coming out conservative or coming out libertarian, more accurately, video. This is basically a video that is going to serve a couple purposes. The first is to essentially stop being a chicken shit and tell everyone in my life that I am no longer the weird hippy dippy liberal that they all thought that I had become. Some will be grateful, some will be confused, depending on at what point in time of my life they met me. The other point of this is to basically provide some context for my few lovely viewers that have found me through other measures, who I appreciate very much. You guys are the first people I actually introduced these to because I haven't really exposed my channel, my new channel, to many people that I know yet. So for you guys, this gives you a little more info and context about me and why I'm doing this, and kind of where I'm coming from on these issues. So basically, this is, the concept of ditching liberalism is how I word it, but you can basically call it my hashtag walk away video if you prefer the hashtag form of things. You can certainly call it my red pill moment, although in Canada you have to be aware that red actually equals liberal, so you're not getting very far with that comment. Plus, it wasn't really one moment, it was sort of a series of moments. A series of life things that happen as they do. So basically, I will try to be brief. This might end up being one of my longer videos just because of the amount of stuff I have to try to cover, and because it lays such a strong foundation for everything else that I'm doing from this point forward. So I grew up in a city of about 10,000 people. Good kid, good childhood, good parents. I was a bit of a stress ball growing up. I had high expectations of myself, and I wasn't necessarily able to always be myself. I put a bit of a mask on for sure. But I was a good kid, nerdy kid, played the oboe, went to church, didn't drink, didn't have sex, didn't smoke. I didn't give anybody any grief. My parents didn't have to constantly lose a lot of sleep or get gray hair over me, from what I'm understanding. Anyway, that came later. And so I had these dreams of going into politics, and so I had, through the advice of a respected teacher, looked at going into hopefully human rights law and then into politics so I could, change the world and make things better. I've always had that desire to try to make things better for people that are suffering. And so I've always had a heart for the world, I guess. So I did follow that in university. I did go into human justice. So a human justice degree here is basically a four-year degree that can be used in different types of justice positions, such as probation, parole officer, social work, various types of, I guess, governmental positions that have to do with their Ministry of Justice. So it was meant to be like a beginner, like a pre-law degree, essentially, a pre-law degree that would enable me to apply at the U.S. in Saskatoon. And so I started this program and then started to have health issues. Plus, I was young and I was just feeling uncertain. And I decided, okay, I'm going to drop out. I got accepted into nursing, which was a position or a program that my sister had also gone through. And it was hard to get into, and I was proud. So I decided to quit and dive into my other passion, which was health sciences. So I did a year of that, but unfortunately I got really sick during that year and I had to drop out because I couldn't, I did my full first year, but I was missing a lot of classes, and I was really sick and really tired and I was really struggling. And so that was when, I basically had to make a decision to change my whole life, except for I didn't even know what I was changing it for. So I was diagnosed with endometriosis officially at age 21, about 8 years after the worst of the symptoms had started. And I proceeded to have, you have to have surgery to diagnose it in the first place. And I proceeded to have two or three after that. And, basically the next 10 years of my life, long story short, was spent, little bits of normal and work and enjoyment, and then a whole bunch of health stuff, and then little bits of normal and work and enjoyment, and so on. So lots of treatments, lots of trials, lots of medications, all of that kind of stuff. I hadn't yet got into natural health, so it was mostly Western medicine, traditional treatments for this very difficult illness to treat. And so during that time, my illness really changed who I was altogether, right? It does make you very vulnerable. It does make you see things differently, and it does sometimes make you a bit jaded because you can't help but feel jealous of people that are fully capable of living their life in a normal capacity without having to worry about this other stuff. And it does really affect your finances and your mental health and everything else. And so it sure can shape you into an activist if you're not careful. So during this time, it set the stage for that. And then I meet someone, someone in my young years who is basically a socialist. I didn't know it at the time, but I see it now. Definitely an activist, definitely full of resentment and rage. He had a really hard childhood. So if you're looking at it from like a psychological point of view, you would definitely see the link between, his issues growing up and issues with family and abuse and pain in childhood, as you could definitely see that it would affect his future. And I mean, I wouldn't obviously, I guess, affect anyone's confidentiality or call anybody out here. That's not my intent. I'm not that kind of woman. But just to, basically give some context, that the person that I was with for about 7 years had some very strong ideals and some very strong opinions and a little bit of paranoia. And it definitely kind of fed into my very naive, open mind that was, trying to absorb all this new stuff in the world. I was anxious and eager to be more open and to travel a bit. This is where I started moving around Canada, Ontario, different cities in Saskatchewan, and then I did end up out in BC, which was more for health reasons, but also for the sake of, just being a gypsy and living life and moving out to, essentially the California of Canada. So that set the stage for essentially what would basically bring me to what you might call a brink. And then as I had to regrew, or you basically have to fall apart and then regrow yourself. So this is basically what set the stage for that, was this relationship, my growing illness. Decided to move out to Vancouver Island, pardon me. Closest place to Vancouver, minus living in a massive city like Vancouver. They have a great health center there, BC Women's Hospital in Vancouver, for endometriosis and pelvic pain. It's a big nationally accredited department. Lots of people go there to try to deal with their issues. So that was where I was headed, gung ho, plus just enjoying the environment of the lifestyle there. I wanted something more slow paced, lots of allopathic and natural medicine that I had gotten into previously. And so moved out there. Things with my ex got worse. Things with my health were getting worse. I was awaiting surgery. I had surgery, and then I was really sick after that. My body kind of crashed. I went into major chronic fatigue, and I was really depressed and really frustrated, and things in my relationship were awful. And I was losing the ability to handle it anymore. So I was kind of getting to that brink of like, I'm gonna break. I can't do this all anymore. And I had a really bad day, and I just kind of called out to the heavens for some help, despite the fact that I had really turned away from my faith, dove into secularism, dove into the nihilism of the West, you might say, which will be another video. But needless to say, I had thought that I had changed my values. I had thought I had become more open-minded than my previous Christian upbringing. But I cried out to the heavens because a lot of this other stuff just maybe wasn't cutting it, and was able to kind of find a woman in a next neighboring town who was willing to help me for free, which was lovely because finances were really sucky because of being sick and then having an ex that threw us into bankruptcy and just whatever. So just a godsend, a beautiful, lovely Roman Catholic energy healer that does healing touch, which is a cool American started version of energy healing, started by nurses to bring it into conjunction with Western medicine. So anyways, so I started seeing this woman. I had 5 sessions with her, didn't really buy into it at the beginning, but then after my 5th session, I came home and my partner had been freaking out on me about something or another. I don't know what, just in a rage and in a vile rage. And I was, for the first time, able to not engage. And I just sort of looked at him as though I was out of my own body. And I realized, I don't have to do this anymore. And if I keep doing this, I'm not gonna live a very good life. And so I just said that I didn't want to do it anymore. And I finally had the courage after 7 years to leave. And so that began my reframing. So he left and I stayed on the island, and I'm living on this beautiful, paradise kind of island. Compared to the rest of Canada, the weather is spectacular. It's beautiful. It's almost Jurassic in nature. You have flowers and bugs and fauna that's like 20 times the size of anything it should be in normal modern times. Waterfalls and just the smell of cotton candy in the air from some of the like the Douglas fir sap, and just a beautiful place. It's really beautiful. I miss it a lot. So the island was a wonderful place. But when you're all by yourself and you're sick and you've gone through trauma and you're just, missing your family who's like 24-hour drive away plus a ferry ride or whatever, suddenly paradise doesn't seem so amazing. And if you do have a chance to listen to my song Secret Garden, maybe don't listen to the original. I will put a new version up. The original was done quite poorly years ago on my very original cell phone, but it's my very first song I wrote back to finish, I guess, or start to finish, in the middle of the night in my cabin in Vancouver Island, realizing that this garden in my dreams is not what it seemed to be. Just meaning this beautiful idea of a paradise is not a paradise if you don't have anything meaningful in your life anymore. And so I was searching for God in all the wrong places, in all the wrong faces. And I was really feeling a dissonance and really feeling like, okay, first of all, I miss my home. I miss my family. I was starting to feel like I missed my faith, which was freaking me out because I didn't know what that meant because I had been so adamantly against it. I'd had some bad experiences. Again, another video I'll make about faith and messed up faith experiences. Um, I thought I knew who I was. I thought I was a super liberal girl, okay with whatever, everything and everything, anything, and I had to figure out that I wasn't. So came home for Thanksgiving to visit and spent some time with family. Was enjoying the beautiful autumn air and the smells of a roast cooking in the oven, or my mom's homemade baking, and that nice smell of Saskatchewan autumn and the beautiful skies of a Saskatchewan fall day over the fields. Like, it's just, if you've never been to somewhere like Saskatchewan or somewhere with a similar geography, it's really something else. But it's also just very personal because it's home for me. And I was really struggling and really thinking, okay, what am I doing? Am I going to stay away just for the sake of proving to everyone how independent and liberal and wonderful I am, or am I going to move back home and be by my family? So sorry for the constant water breaks, and I still don't know how to edit despite buying the program. It's just a mental blockage. I won't go there. So anyways, I do apologize, but thank you guys for being awesome viewers that don't care that I don't edit. So basically moved home, decided, basically it was my nephew that got me. It was what pushed me over the edge. My cute little nephew said, I love you, Auntie Kelly, and I miss you. I don't want you to go back. And my heart just, oh God, just broke. And I said, okay, fine, I'm moving home. So I did move home. Now that was the beginning of me slowly getting back into this, I guess, conversion to conservatism and back to my old values. And so it wasn't fast though, and I was not complicit. I was stubborn. You had to, I went in kicking and screaming. And so I did dive right into like super religious right away, which is weird, but it was just because of the people that I was hanging out with. And my parents were going to church, so I started playing piano regularly at church. At a Lutheran church in the area with a wonderful pastor, great congregation. And it ended up even being the board member, like a board member, and then a chairman of the board, which is crazy because I wasn't even sure how I felt about everything yet. I was still reeling and trying to figure out, am I this West Coast liberal nihilist girl that's into paganism and secularism, or am I this like nice Christian, prairie conservative girl? And the answer, of course, is that I'm both. But at the time, it was just a huge inner dichotomy and a huge inner war. So going through all of this, it was a little bit too rigid and strict, and then I'd get back away and I'd dive into something else. It was a constant, back and forth of trying to figure out this balance. And basically, that was just a 3-year process of, my health had finally been okay since surgery in BC, and I had finally come around, and my energy was getting better. I was doing amazing natural things and learning all kinds of things, and my relationship with God was getting stronger, and I was starting to miss the island a little less and appreciate Saskatchewan more and more. And then I basically got to another major milestone in my life, which was meeting my partner 3 years ago. So this is, of course, big in many ways, as love is. But as far as this particular story, I won't get all gaga for you for the sake of time and relevance. But he did kind of open up the concept of libertarianism to me. Now, I'm not a libertarianist because I'll start that over. I'm not a libertarian because of him, but you could say that he introduced me to the concept. It's not something that, even though we've been around since '73 in Canada, many people don't know what it is. So he sent me some stupid Facebook tests back in the days when I was still on Facebook. I came back a strong libertarian. I didn't know what it was. We chuckled. A couple months in, I found out, oh, you're a libertarian. You voted for the libertarian MP in our riding in the last, last election. And so got into it a little more, starting to understand the "Don't Tread on Me" posters around the house, and all that kind of stuff. So it was something I still voted liberal in 2015. I still considered myself a liberal because I assumed liberal equals empathy, and liberal equals caring about people, and liberal equals not being a conservative asshole, because that's what I actually thought. And so I didn't shift until a little bit later, but when I did start to figure out what libertarianism really was this last year or so, 2 years, I guess you could say it wasn't a hard switch, because it's just who I am to a T. Everything in our Canadian platform stands for me exactly. So that was an easy sell for me, but it wasn't like, oh, I'm just a libertarian now, I had a red pill moment. It wasn't quite that simple, right? It is this process of shifting and changing, and the biggest part of it was self-growth and self-honesty, and realizing, okay, are my opinions of this stuff, coming from a knee-jerk emotional reaction, or are they coming from truth? And is truth as relative as people say it is? And so, these are some of the big questions that do shift over time. And I had many experiences. I've been called unprivileged, and it was confusing, and it got me understanding some things. And there's been little things, people along the way, they'll come up over various videos in the future. But really, what happened over the winter is what really just tipped me right over the edge. And what that was just immense suffering and coming out of it, because there was only really going to be two ways of me coming out of this, and one was dead and one was alive. And if you're going to come out alive, you might as well be a better version of yourself for it, right? So I got really sick this winter. I was up waiting for my 6th major surgery for endometriosis. There's just a lot of scar tissue and adhesions from damage from the disease years before, even though it was under control. And I was waiting a long time. There was an admin error, which made me wait too long. I wasn't eating. I was living on Ensure and crackers. I was weak. I was exhausted. I was in horrible pain. I was in the ER sometimes from pain so bad they had to give me fentanyl, which still didn't cut it. And I mean, this is the kind of pain, if you've ever had it, that it really messes with your head. It was causing trauma. It was really bad. So I had my surgery and things weren't healing, and it was slow, and same thing, just I was going downhill, and I got really depressed. And in February, March, I just didn't particularly want to be alive anymore. Now, because of my faith and the fact that I'm just not this kind of person, I was a bit too chicken shit. I'm never going to ever do something like that. I'm not a suicidal person, but I didn't necessarily want to be alive anymore, because I just thought logically, what is the future? If this is the future, like who's going to want this? So much pain, so much suffering, can't work, just felt like I was just always hitting a wall, never ending. And no matter how hard I worked to dig myself out, and I felt abandoned by my government because of how much I'd had to fight with I had to be on, social assistance slash, disability benefits, which was awful and degrading and awful. And I'll get into that in socialism videos in the future. And I did have to, be somewhat of, I guess, a social justice warrior for myself, for my own benefits, and really realizing, like, holy shit, the government doesn't care at all. And if it does, the few people that do, by the time the money that our big tax dollars go in, like, trickles down to the people that actually need it, there's barely any left anyway. There's so much bureaucracy, and there's so many people using the system. And because we're all bred that we have to be compassionate to everyone, all the time, no matter what, because everyone is inherently good no matter what, right? It's only their past that defines them. There's no such thing as someone that's just a shithead, right? That's what we're supposed to believe as good, empathetic people from sociological perspectives. Well, that's all fine and dandy, but there are people that use the system, and they do screw it over for the good people that are really just trying and need a hand up. So these are the sorts of things you start to realize. Also, of course, living in poverty, going through illness, when you're not doing so well financially, you really realize a lot of other things in that realm as well, particularly getting used and abused, people earning my trust, me giving what little I had, being generous and kind and open, and then being, scammed, walking around my neighborhood and always trying to pick up garbage and always trying to make my property look better. Even if I had no money, I didn't want it to look dirty. I wanted to have dignity. I cared about my appearance, about who I cared about my body, my building, my house, my neighborhood, my community, and just seeing how people just didn't give a shit, But then even still, I was such a bleeding heart. No, they're sad. It's because of their growing up. They didn't feel good. You have to, it's your job to make them feel better, Kelly. It's your job to make them feel worthy. And then they'll be good people. And, maybe that's true sometimes. And so it's great to have that mentality and try to help people up. But what really sucks is when you assume that everybody, if given the right circumstances, will thrive. That's simply incorrect. It's utopian thinking, and it's not ideal. So I will digress from that, because I don't want to get into the socialism stuff right now, because it's a pretty big topic. But needless to say, this all definitely shifted my perspective in huge, huge ways. So coming back to Saskatchewan, where it's fairly conservative and grounded, was probably a good thing for me, to go, it's like a pendulum, right? I was really conservative growing up. I don't believe in all those ideals. I have shifted, and then I went all the way over to like the left. I'm on the left in my side. And then, I'm feeling like I'm back in the middle. And, depending on where you're at, maybe some of the stuff in my videos, you're going to think, oh, she's alt-right. But everybody seems to be alt-right if you're not left these days. So I don't necessarily care for what title anyone chooses to give me or my ideas. But I guess basically, in general, this winter, going through that much pain and suffering, and then going through a loss of some friendships, and just really realizing things about personal relationships, and issues I was having with putting up boundaries, why I was getting frustrated with people, how I treat people, how do I help people in my life? Do I enable them? Because sometimes I think maybe I was enabling them, thinking I don't want to hurt them. I don't ever want them to feel sadness or pain. Really learning what helping people means, really learning what it is to be accountable, really learning what that entails, and how that's actually the best way to help people. So, all this stuff came forward, and I really had to fight through and be my best self this winter. And finally, right as I thought I was just going to give up, Jordan Peterson came into my viewpoint, first through the Bill C-16 stuff, which is a whole different story, but then I got into his lectures. And of course, if you were into Jordan Peterson, you know what he's like and what he speaks of. And again, that'll be another video, but he taught me that no matter how much suffering or oppression I was going through, which was valid and huge, it didn't matter. I still had to be the best version of myself. And if you have meaning and you recognize that there's a you-sized hole in the world, you're more likely to get through suffering because you're going to realize that there's a point at the end of it all. And this is something that liberalism doesn't particularly get into that much. And neither does nihilism, and neither does secularism. So basically, it gave me just a leg up. He gave me a perspective to sort of snap out of it and to be the best damn person you can be despite your suffering, more or less. And so that kind of helped bring me out. I started following some other different people. I started to open my echo chamber up. I started to dive back into my political past. I got a job from a wonderful, wonderful business owner who helped me more through free market capitalism than, social services in the government ever could, ironically. Again, another story. And I started to build my way up. I'm still struggling with health. I'm struggling with gaining weight. I'm struggling with all these different things. It's very frustrating. My spirit is a lot higher, and it's because I feel like I have my values back, and I feel like I have my purpose back. And I feel like this liberalism stint that I had, this thing that I thought, like, this is who I am. And my dad would say to me, you're not a liberal, and he'd smirk. And I was so mad, yes, I am, Dad. I'm a liberal. And like, no, you're not. And he was right. I'm not. I'm liberal in the sense that I'm more, maybe a little more open than maybe some very conservative, old-fashioned people. I am a very moderate person, and I can always see stuff on this side. I do have a bit of that spirit, but when it comes to like the big stuff, the foundational stuff, the value stuff, by all means, I think I have been a conservative all along. And I was in denial because, quite frankly, it's easier to be in denial and assume that everything and anything is okay. It makes my life a lot easier to justify when I make mistakes. It makes it a lot easier to just not get in trouble from anyone if you aren't deemed to be progressive enough based on your, say, opinion on something like modern gender theory. It's a lot easier just to say, oh yeah, I'm a liberal, and everything is okay, everything is fine with me, nothing bothers me, I don't believe in any kind of, strict morality, or, I just think it's all fine, truth is relative. Those sorts of things are things that I was really pushing on myself, and they didn't fit. They might fit some people, that's great, but for me, I needed more, and faith was a big part of it. And family was a big part of it. Community was a big part of it, coming back to my roots. And all of this to me was part of my walk away, my return to conservatism, and my leaving of the left. So I guess what I will leave you with here is kind of where I'm at now, which is a huge journey that I have ahead of me, which is pretty exciting, which is continuing to dismantle thoughts and beliefs that are simply untrue. Beliefs like, I can't be compassionate if I'm a conservative, or there's no such thing as a compassionate conservative. Believing that responsible fiscal policy, or, being a bit slower and a little more resistant to change is not necessarily bad. Understanding that money can be used for good, understanding that I have called people out on things I shouldn't have, and apologizing and making amends for those things, and being honest with myself, no matter how embarrassing it might be that I have to admit I was some sort of annoying SJW in that moment, right? It involves a lot of truth, and it involves a lot of reevaluation, and I encourage all of you to do that if you're in a position like I am. If you consider yourselves, a bleeding heart that just wants everyone to feel better, please reevaluate. Not because I'm asking you to reevaluate caring. Don't stop caring. Reevaluate what you believe about what actually helps people. Reevaluate what you believe about what helps your loved ones and what helps your country. Reevaluate how much reliance you put on things like our government, our media. There's different things that you really have to reevaluate, because when it comes down to the facts, because unfortunately empathy is all great, but like utopian ideas will get nowhere without someone to actually, generally the conservatives, go in and hash out the details and make policy. And Jordan Peterson has always said, people call him alt-right, but it's so stupid because he claims to be a classical liberal, so you can call him whatever you want, but he's always said, the left needs the right and the right needs the left. The right will always build hierarchical structures, which can lead to tyranny if not put in check, and the left should be there to keep them in check. And so I believe that completely. So this is not a left versus right right versus wrong. This is about literally finding the balance and understanding the purpose of both sides of a political ideology, or in this case, in my opinion, a very personal ideology that defines how we speak to each other in our family and in our relationships and how we put up boundaries and all of these things. And so I encourage you to reevaluate. If you're someone who's very sensitive, if you've been called an empath, a highly sensitive person, that's what this channel is about. This channel is about looking at contentious issues, social issues, political issues. It's about looking at things that are going on from wanting to be gentle and compassionate and wanting the actual best outcome, because that's an important one too, right? It's all fine and dandy to say, I want the best for everybody, equality. You know, actually having the best outcome for everyone does not necessarily mean just having utmost, you know, laissez-faire compassion for everyone all the time. There are the ways to actually help people, help yourself, help your friends, help your fellow man, and help your country. So I do encourage some free thinking on that. That's something that's been huge for me. It's a hell of an eye-opener, and it kind of throws you off your feet to have to redo an entire philosophy that you based your whole life on. But it is so worth it because I am freer than ever, and I can help people better than ever by being a little more of a tough ass. So I'm going to wrap this up. I'm going to say to those of you who are new or just have met me in this period of my life, thank you for supporting me through this, and I hope you continue to do so. I really appreciate you. I'd like to say a shout out to Embarrassing Mom, who, if you haven't checked out, you should. She's really awesome. Just for giving me a bit more courage as I go along this this path. I have a lot of people to thank for courage. Stephen Crowder was one that I had originally decided to just stop being a chicken shit and make these videos in the first place. But there's so many people, you know, along the way that have just been awesome. So lots of people to thank, lots of things to consider. It's a really big journey, and I'm super glad you're on it with me. To those of you who knew me before I went liberal, and you're thinking, oh, okay, this is the Kelly we remember. I'm back. Yes, it's me. I'm still a little weird, and I'm always gonna have, you know, some weird quirks, but I am back to kind of the passionate and yes, anal retentive conservative girl that I was, but I'm a little more balanced. And to those of you who met me while I was in my liberal mode or in my weak, vulnerable, trying to figure out who the hell I was and make sense of the world mode, this is going to come as, who the hell is this woman? She's changed. Maybe you'll blame my boyfriend. Lots of women like to do that. Maybe you'll blame my illness. I'm jaded now. I don't know. Maybe you'll say that it's a Christian cult thing or Jordan Peterson turned me into some, I don't know. You can all say what you'd like. Or maybe you'll say, wow, I see some light in her eyes. I see her open and free, and I want to see more of that. So I hope that's where you guys are at. I'm really sorry to anybody that I've ever been too harsh with, or if you think I've been uncompassionate at the end, if I've called you out on being a better person or being the best version of yourself, it was out of love. This is my new way of being. I suppose that's what makes me conservative. I'm going to push accountability and emancipation from our own chains, and accountability and individuality, and I'm going to push facts, and I'm going to push pragmatism, and I'm going to push empathy and balance with all of those things. And I really hope that these people that met me as a liberal will join me in this as well, and trust my character and my integrity and who I am, and know that I won't go and turn into some racist bigot that doesn't care about anybody but myself or anything but money, because it's not who I am. So thank you all for watching. This has been a pretty fun video to make. It's very long. Thank you for making it all the way to the end. That's really awesome. So I hope you all have a great evening. As always, be good to each other, not because the government tells you to, but because it's on your heart to do so. And be your best self and be honest with yourself. I swear it's easier in the end. So take good care, and I will chat with you again soon. Bye.